I welcome you here again. So today we have Dr. Naman Sreen with us. So welcome, sir.
Thank you.
So we'll start with your academic journey first, sir. Please tell us.
Yeah, sure. So I did my 10th from Yadvindra Public School in Patiala. I originally hailed from Patiala. And then I did my 12th from DAV Public School, Patiala. I moved from YPS to DAV. The reason was that YPS was an ICSC board and DAV is a CBSE board, and most of the competitions happened, of the competitive exams happened as per the syllabus of CBSE. So after doing my 12th, I decided to do my engineering from Punjabi University, Patiala. Punjabi University is interesting in itself because it's the second university in the world to be named after language.
Oh,
The
okay.
first university to be named after a language is Hebrew University. It's in India.
Okay.
Then after completing my BTech, I worked for around 1 year as a research consultant. And then after working for 1 year, I decided to do my MBA from Great Lakes Institute of Management, Chennai. After my PhD, I joined a company as an area sales manager called Go Frugal Technologies. And then I also worked as business consultant with Rishta Apps after my MBA. So after the work, I decided to do my PhD. When I decided to do my PhD, I had two colleges that I could apply to because of the limitations in date. I decided to do it in November, December. Most of the older IIM states were already over. So I shortlisted two, IIM Shillong and XLRI, Jamshedpur. I applied. I was called for interviews for both of them. To get called for interviews, you have to give either CAT or GMAT. That I gave GMAT. The advantage of giving GMAT is that if you want to apply to foreign universities, the score of GMAT counts. The score of CAT doesn't count. Score of CAT only counts for Indian colleges, right? So I gave GMAT. In XLRI, my interview went okay, but I didn't get through. And IIM Shillong, I was lucky enough to get through. So usually the main criteria of getting through PhD into an IIM, through my experience, what I could say is that first, you have to have some knowledge of the area you are applying to. So for example, if I am applying to marketing, they would ask basic questions related to marketing. For example, what is marketing? What is segmentation? What is targeting? All of these are concepts related to marketing, basically. Further, you have to have some knowledge of statistics as well. So what is standard deviation? What is variance? Not in-depth knowledge, but knowledge that this is what it means, right? What is a t-test? What is a z-test? My interview went well, so all of these questions were asked to me. The main thing also they're testing is your capability of doing PhD. What I mean by that is because when you're doing a PhD, it doesn't only revolves around writing research, but it's also a journey where you're fighting with yourself. For example, you're always lonely for 4 years. You have to be there, sit in the lab, read papers, discuss with professors. It's a completely different life from the outside life. And you also sometimes feel that probably you're not good enough, because there's a syndrome that happens during your PhD. All of us would go through during our PhD. So during your PhD, main thing that will keep you different or will help you complete your PhD in time is first of all the guide you choose. In IIMs, you have the ability to choose a guide, right? So if when you're selecting a guide, make sure that your guide is open. What I mean by open basically means it allows you to attend conferences. It allows you with doing a research topic that you are interested in. He allows you to bring forward your point, right? So there would be some professors who might not like when you are speaking, but who basically treats you like a colleague.
Hmm.
If you get a guide like that, then it's a blessing. I was lucky enough to get a guide like that in Professor Pradeep Sudhangani. So doing, he's a professor in IIM Shillong, and he also had his education from IIT Bombay and Ross Business School in US. Yeah, after you have chosen your guide, the other thing is what I would like people to do is to select a research topic.
Mhm.
When we're selecting a research topic, I went with something I really like. So if I look into my background, I belong to a small city called Patiala, and we always used to roam in a garden in Patiala. So that garden is called as Balandari Garden. It's called Balandari because it is 12 lakes from where you can pick up. And we would find these big advertisements saying "Do not cut trees, trees give oxygen." So I got really interested in the environmental aspect, and therefore I decided to do my PhD in green consumption.
Mhm.
Green consumption means make people buy green products that are environmental friendly. So during my PhD, I wrote my first article with Professor Safrangani and Professor Shankar Purbe. Both of those professors were in IIM Shillong. My first article was mainly on how culture impacts green purchase behavior. So I looked into various aspects of culture and how that culture would encourage people to buy green products. Right. So luckily that paper became a hit. We were talking about one of my articles getting 500 citations. So that was my first PhD article.
Yes. Okay.
And I was also lucky enough to be the first one in IIM Shillong to get an A category publication. So there are
Okay.
different category
Yeah.
publications: A, B, B, C, A star, B, B, C. So I was lucky enough, and my guide was really happy. He gave them A's everywhere, saying that my student has got an A publication. So it was a proud moment at that time. It happened during my second year of my PhD.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So the main thing is when you're writing research paper, if you find a topic interesting, you tend to get more into it, tend to explore more, right? So why is this happening? What could be the research gap? How can I fill it? What have I observed around me? Also, one of the things during PhD, which I think few of us are skeptical of doing, is discussing our research idea. So most of us fear that a research idea will be stolen. Someone else will get the research idea and probably write a paper around it, and what we will do after that. But my personal experience says is that when you discuss it, you get new insight. Furthermore, even if you have the same idea, and even if you are reading, say, for example, which is a rare case, that you are reading the same literature, the writing style would differ. The
Absolutely.
way
Yeah.
one person would bring forward that point and the way you would bring forward that point would be different. So you don't have to worry about it, sharing your ideas. And I think in academia, if we will not share ideas, we will lag behind most countries. So most countries promote sharing ideas to become more creative and innovative. So that's I have followed throughout my research journey, and now I have around 10 A publications and
That's,
around
that's wonderful.
and in total around 24 publications.
Okay. That's
Yeah. So after doing my PhD, now I was in a situation that I had to apply to various colleges. So after my PhD, I had around 2A publications and around 3B publications and 2C publications. So around 7, 8 publications I did have. I would suggest people to get these much publications, at least get an, even if they want to target a single article during their PhD, focus on getting an A category publication. Because right now, the market for job search is not that easy to get
Mhm.
into. So because there's so much competition, there's so many PhDs coming from premier institutions that you have to have a differentiating factor. And that differentiating factor comes from your public because you're a fresher. No one knows how you teach, right? Right? So you've just done your PhD. So if you have any publication, most of the B schools shortlist you for interview. So I did apply to first. I applied to a university called as Flame University in Pune. Right, I got through. Then I applied to Ford School of Management. I got through. Then I applied to General Global Business School. I got. But I had three options to decide from. And this is when I submitted my PhD in September 2020. I applied for various jobs, looking at the websites of the colleges. The first college I applied was Prem University, Pune. The interview went well. I got through, and then I applied to Ford School of Management, Delhi. I got through, and General Global Business School in Sonipat, and I got through. So I have to decide from these three colleges in September 2020. So after I decided to go for General Global Business School, the reason specifically was that, and you will have your own reasons to select the B school if you have multiple options. Right? So for few people, salary would be a reason. They are giving me a higher package. For others, work-life balance would be an option. Right? So they're giving a better work-life balance as compared to other colleges. Teaching hours are this much, research hours are this much. Right? So you decide on that. So for me, the best mix was for General Global Business at that time. So I joined General Global Business School in September 2020. Then COVID was going on, so we had online sessions on. So I used to take these sessions from my home. Then in May 2021, I decided to move on from General Global Business School to an IIM. So I just joined IIM Rohtak as an assistant professor. I worked there for around 8-9 months, and then I came back to General Global Business School. Again, the reason being that the best mix for me is Vagari, right? So now I've been working with General Global Business School for around a year since I've joined back. Total, I have worked for around 2.5 years as an assistant professor, from submitting my PhD to joining the teaching profession. What I would like young aspirants who are looking to get into academia is, first of all, you have to get shortlisted by the college. To get shortlisted by the college, you need to have some publications, which I had already talked about, right? So it's better to have an A category publication. Second criteria is that when you're giving our research is like a baby. So if someone insults our baby, we get hurt, right? So we say that, oh my God, why is this guy saying so much about my research? But this perspective has to change. This perspective, you have to keep your mind open, because if someone is criticizing your work, they may be thinking from a different viewpoint, and that viewpoint might help you in future, right? So if a senior professor or another professor who is attending your seminar, first let me tell you what is the procedure for getting into a B. So first, a research seminar happens. In the research seminar, you have to present your research to the whole faculty members of that school. Right? So, for example, if I am giving a research seminar at IIM Rohtak, everyone from IIM Rohtak would sit there and listen to my research. In the research seminar, they are testing for mainly three things. The first thing is your confidence. Will you be able to handle a class of MBA students? Because they would be curious, they will ask you a lot of questions. Will you be able to handle that pressure or not? Right. The second thing is your communication skills. Whether you are able to explain the complex concept in a simple language or not. And so, because research is usually much more complex, right? Whether you're able to explain it in a simple language. The third thing is in communication, also storytelling play a critical role, whether you are able to build a story around your topic or not, right? So, and the third thing important is addressing comments of faculty members, right? Which I was talking about. So addressing comments would mean that if they are raising some points and you feel that you cannot do this in your research, you still uh, think from their perspective, right? You say that, well, sir, that's correct in that perspective. However, I'm not doing this rather than being defensive, right? A lot of people, because I've also attended a lot of research seminars, I see a lot of new PhD scholars getting defensive, right? So, no, this can't be. Don't get defensive. Allow people to express their opinion, listen to them, and then say that, okay, sir, you're probably thinking from this perspective, and I was thinking from this perspective, but your perspective is also interesting, and maybe in future I can do that, right? So you have to be that calm, you have to be that open, right? So during your research seminar, after the research seminar, usually uh, an interview happens with the dean or the director of the right? So the dean of the director is first of all checking again your basic concept, whether you can teach, and also what kind of subjects you can. Is there a need for a faculty for that particular subject or not? Is testing that, right? So for example, when I gave my interview at IIM Rohtak, the main subject that I told that everyone would say marketing management and consumer behavior. I also said that I could teach green marketing, retail management. I can also plot electives. But at the same time, I said that because I'm new to academia, I can teach any subject that is offered to me because I'm willing to learn that. Again, they're checking whether you are willing to be adaptable in the system or not, right? So, or you will be a stone in the system, which will be difficult to move. So you have to be dynamic when you are in academia. So after that, external reviewers come in. External reviewers are experts, and they also ask you questions related to your research and your interest and your way of teaching, right? So how you will teach the class, how you will manage the class. So once these interviews are done, usually you get a result within 2 weeks time, 1 to 2 weeks time, after your process. This process might slightly vary from B school to B school, but more or less, this is the process, right? So there would be a research seminar, there would be a interview with the dean or the director, and there would be an external reviewer interview. Right. So these are the three things. After you clear your interviews, then if you have multiple options, then I've already told you that you look into various criteria from salary to work-life balance to other things, to research incentives. Uh, but when you enter a B school and you enter the teaching profession, a teaching profession is slightly different from corporate profession. And the reason I believe so is because there is responsibility towards students. Right. So these are people who are going to be the future of the country.
Right.
And as a result, you have to set up an example
Yes,
to
absolutely.
them.
Yes, correct.
So for example, you cannot have again the type of student life you were living before in front of the students. So you cannot be just smoking around or drinking around, right? So it leaves a bad impression towards it. So you have to think of these things as well. You have to think about ethics as well, right? So because if the students would feel that you are ethical, they will tend to be more ethical in your class. Right? If they will feel that you are not ethical, then they will behave the way they want to behave. So it will be really difficult to manage the class. That's also an advice for young PhD scholars that once you enter into academia as a professor, make sure that you do not carry the same kind of attitude that you had when you were a student.
Mm.
Your attitude should be an attitude of responsibility.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely.
And right. So it doesn't mean that responsibility doesn't mean that you have to be strict. That also you have to be clear on, right? So the responsibility means that you have to care about your student. By care, I mean if they're facing an issue in your subject,
Mhm.
they should feel that they can come to you and talk to you. They shouldn't be afraid that if I will ask this question, this
Mhm.
guy would insult me in front of the whole class. That fear should not be there, and that has to be set up by your when you are having initial interaction with your students. That they are also participant of your class, and they can ask any question,
Mm.
and no question is considered stupid in class,
Mhm.
right? So that they feel confident when they're facing an issue that sir, I'm not able to answer.
Mm.
What it also helps you is it enhances your knowledge because you're answering queries again and again. Your concept clarity becomes much better when you're teaching rather than when you're reading,
Mm.
right? And that is also one suggestion. Writing research papers now. So when you get into academia, there are three things that you have to do. That is teaching, which I was talking about, then writing research, and then administration. So these three things have to be done. So now, second thing is about research writing. Uh, Research writing is, I would say, is more of a skill. Is more of a skill rather than doing too much hard work. Hard work is important, no doubt. But you should know how to put forward your research idea to the audience, and you have to understand who your audience are.
Mm.
Right? So there is a certain structure that I follow for writing my research articles, and probably I believe if most of us would follow that structure, you won't get a desk rejection. So when you submit to a journal, there's a chance of getting a desk rejection as well. That is, they will not send to the reviewers.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you write at a certain format, then probably the chances of desk rejection reduces, is what my experience is. So, for example, the different sections that you have to write for the research paper. First comes your title.
Yes.
When you're writing a title, the title should be as such that it gives a summary of your research paper. So
Okay.
usually I don't like there are a lot of fancy titles as well, right? So I don't like fancy titles. I want to tell the entire snippet of my research paper in this title. Right. So for example, my first paper title was Impact of Culture, Behavior and Gender on Green Purchase and Intent. It's clear from the title that we are studying culture, we are studying behavior, we are studying gender impact on green purchase and intent. The summary of the research is given in the title itself. Right. So make sure that whatever your title is, it gives the summary of the research. I could have given a fancy research title such as culture great for green, right? So for example, right? So at that time, it is not telling any story, right? Telling culture and green, but what I'm doing, if there's no, so it's not telling that it's an effect of culture, behavior, and gender on green, right? So there are a lot of elements that are missing in the title that the second title I gave. So make sure that your title tells all those elements. The second thing is your abstract. Abstract is again a summary of your research. There could be two types of abstracts. One is a structured abstract, right, where you write the entire abstract, and then there is a abstract which Emerald Insight follows. That is broken down into various paragraphs, right? So the first paragraph, usually when you're writing an abstract, make sure it's around 200 words, 150 200 words, according to the author's instruction that the journal has given. So in the first few lines, it's better to write a little background about your study, right? So you tell that, well, for example, the environmental problems are really at a high rate, and to change this, consumers have to change their consumption. Right? So this is a background that is giving significance why you want to study consumer purchasing, right? The background. Then after that, you write what your study is doing, right? This study collected data from these many respondents using this methodology, right? And then finally, you write these were the findings of the study. It found that culture has an impact, positive impact on green purchase, attitude has a positive, all the findings. And then finally, small conclusion that the findings would benefit practitioners, whoever is your reader, right? So if you're writing for practitioners, you would write it would help practitioners to get more insights into green purchase behavior. And so abstract should follow this format. Background, what your study is doing, methodology you're using, how you collected your data, what are the findings, and finally a small conclusion. But like, then comes your introduction section. In your introduction section, again, you have to follow a certain structure. Your first paragraph should be about, again, background, but in this background, you have to present numbers. It is better to present big numbers. So for example, if I'm doing a study on COVID-19 and hospitality, I could say give big numbers like these many million jobs have been lost in hospitality sector due to COVID-19. Right. So that will give a basically importance of your research, right? So you're studying hospitality, studying employment and COVID-19 context. So that background, you have to give big numbers, like these many jobs are getting lost, this is what is happening, these many $1 million have been lost during COVID-19. Therefore, there's a need to study this, right? So after the background comes the second paragraph, which is your literature. Not exactly the literature review, but the summary of literature. Right. So people to solve this problem, people have studied this. However, this has not been studied. Right? Whatever you have studied. Right? So this has not been studied. So after that, why what you are studying is important. Right. So you will give a paragraph about it. Right. So I am that this research aims to study this because, right. So these are the reasons that probably I would like to study this. And then finally, after you're given the reasons and you write your research questions. Hence, this study aims to answer the following research questions: RQ1, RQ2, RQ3. And then a small paragraph of how you will study the research. And to study these research questions, we will be utilizing a certain theory, right? So, for example, theory of planned behavior. I will be utilizing theory of planned behavior, right? So, and why a theory of planned behavior would be valid for this context. A little bit about it, right? So theory of planned behavior have been used in the hospitality sector by many scholars. They have stated that this theory effectively explains people's behavior during crisis situations such as COVID-19. Therefore, we believe theory of planned behavior is an appropriate theory for this study, right? So something like that. And then finally, your last paragraph would tell structure of your paper. So in section 2, we'll be doing literature review. In section 3, we'll be doing methodology or hypothesis development. In section 4, we'll be doing methodology. In section 5, data analysis. Section 6, discussion and implication. Section 7, limitations and future. Right? So this way, you can write your introduction. Usually, if your first 3 things are correct, it's and I believe that most of the readers do not have time to read your entire paper. They will read your title, they will read your abstract, they will read your introduction, get a fair idea that how you have written your article. Right? So whether it's publishable or not publishable. If you write these 3 things correct, it's the chances of not getting this rejection are high. Right? So you will not get. Then of course there is a literature review. In the literature review, you have to according to your topic, you will have titles, what the literature is saying. Then you have to also put a gap. This is the gap, and the way you are fulfilling it. And then there's a hypothesis development section where you will say how a certain variable is related to other variables. And usually in hypothesis development, a lot of people face issues when they choose variables that have not been done in literature. And a lot of students have come across to me and asked me, so what should we do now? We're not finding any literature that is telling the relationship of these two variables in a certain context, right? So for example, they are not able to find a relationship between, say, extraversion. Extraversion is a personality trait that someone is outgoing, and fear to go out in COVID, right? So if it seems like the hypothesis would be that extraversion has a negative influence on fear to go out because these people want to go out. They will not have any fear. But to come to this hypothesis, if you're not having any literature, how would you come? Right? So there are various ways. One thing is you find similar kind of literature. It's not necessary that the literature would be in COVID-19. It might be for another disease, Ebola, for example, right? So COVID-19, Ebola, someone has studied extraversion and its impact on fear.
Mhm.
You could take that, or you can take from, you can see where what from the concept of the construct itself, so the variable itself, that is extraversion and fear. So if you can also figure it out from your thinking, from your own reasoning, right? So that also you can write in hypothesis development. But in literature review, your thinking might not work that much. But in hypothesis development, two things would work. One is the literature, and also your thinking. Why do you think the
Mhm.
relationship would be like?
Mhm.
So why do you think is an element usually people ignore. They say the literature is not there, we cannot do it. We cannot make that hypothesis very difficult. But you also have to think, right? So how that relationship is in hypothesis development. The third thing is methodology. Of course, methodology would depend on what type of research you're doing, whether you're doing qualitative or quantitative, and within them there are various subcategories. So, for example, in quantitative, whether you're doing ANOVA, whether you're doing regression, whether you're doing structure equation modeling, right? And in qualitative, whether you're doing thematic analysis, whether you're doing ethnography, whether you're doing layering interviews. So these are different types of qualitative techniques. According to that technique, you have to follow a certain format of writing that you will follow for methodology, whatever technique you're using for answering your research questions. And then comes the discussion section. Again, a section that is usually not well written. So discussion section, you have to not only inform your results, you have to inform that how your results are different or similar from previous scholars. And if you are getting a contradictory result, what could be the possible reason?
Mhm.
Right? So what could be the possible reason? So for example, I was doing a research on green consumption, and my hypothesis was that if government policies are there for environmental protection, people will be more inclined towards green consumption. It's if government is more towards environmental policies, likely that it will create a culture within the people, and that we should be more environmental friendly, and therefore they will buy more of green products, such as, for example, have solar panel installed or buy natural honey, right? So they will get involved more into it. However, interestingly, the results were opposite. The results showed a negative influence. Now, how would I explain it? The literature is saying that if government is doing it, people should do it. Right? So here your thinking also plays a role in this. So you say that, yeah, your results are coming contradictory, but why it could be the case? So, for example, in my case, I took an example from a study done on blood test for
Okay.
taking blood sample. So what we figured out in that research is that when a university forces people to donate their blood, they're less likely to donate their.
Mhm.
The reason being that donating blood is an altruistic activity. That is, you're helping others and you want to feel good about it. Right? So, if you're donating blood, but if it is forced upon, that feeling of goodness goes away because everyone is doing it. You're not different. Right? So, people tend to not do it.
Mhm.
Similarly, for environmental protection, we gave the reason. The probable reason could be that if government is trying to force more environmental policies, so people behave environmental friendly to feel good about them that they're saving the environment, and therefore they are not likely to. They think that if government is coming up with policies, they are forcing us to do something, and therefore they stop doing that. It's just this way you have to think, right? And you'll get ideas from a very different study. Look at blood donation versus this study, right? So very different studies. So it's not necessary that you will get your ideas to explain your contradictory findings or even develop your hypothesis development from similar type of study. You might get it from a very different study, from health study, for example, in our case, right? So that also you should keep in mind that your answers will come not only from your area, but different areas can give answers to your queries. So then come your implication sections. I will not go in detail, but implications is divided into theoretical implications and visual implications. And then finally, your limitations and future research section comes in research. Right? One problem with implications that I face when I review articles for various journals is that people or scholars usually give implications not related to the findings of their study. They give general implications that marketers should do that. But whenever you're writing an implication of your study, only write about the findings of your study, how your findings will help a practitioner, rather than writing a journal statement. So that we should keep in mind that whatever the finding is, how that is contributing to practitioners or to theory, rather than looking into some general scenarios. Similarly, for limitation and feature research. For example, if someone is doing qualitative research, they usually write a sample size was small because qualitative research you have to take interviews and you cannot have a large sample size. This is a journal statement. Reviewers know that you're doing a qualitative research, a sample size will be small. So you have to give something more to your limitation so that it becomes interesting. Right? So that also scholars need to keep in mind. So this is how the research article format is. So I've talked about teaching, I've talked about research, and also writing. The third responsibility, and which is a responsibility that most of us don't want to do but have to do, is administrative work. And administrative work is also an interesting part of a B school, where you will be given different tasks. You will have a team, and you have to work with a team. I would suggest that I would suggest each scholar when they enter into academia to know that these three tasks they have to perform: teaching, research, and administration, and give ample amount of their time to these three tasks. They divide their whole day so that they're able to cover these three tasks. The fourth thing, which should be important, is again communication. That is, if you are given an opportunity to speak your viewpoint, then you should take that opportunity. So, for example, I've taken a guest lecture at IM Shillong, so that I can go there and speak to the young PhD scholars. I've also taken a session with a consulting company. I've also taken a session with Fortune International Business School in Delhi. And now I will have another session on 17th June with Amity, right? So if you're given an opportunity, and like I'm lucky enough that you contacted me, and we are also having a discussion on research, right? So if such an opportunity is given, take it, take it because it will help you to express your opinion and also help young scholars who are going through a difficult phase in their lives, probably not getting any guidance. as well. So, and that's all the fourth thing that scholars should keep in mind. Right? So, anything else you want to ask me, please?
That's all, sir. It was really informative and quite, required information that you shared. So we are just closing. So is there any last final words with you, which you want to share with all the viewers?
Yeah, sure. So, I would like to share with all the viewers that whatever happens in life, be positive and learn every day. Even if you learn a single thing every day, it will change your life. So learn every day. Also, there's no substitute for writing. So if you want to do research, you might be thinking great, but if you not write, your research or thesis will not get finished. So two things keep in mind: be positive, learn every day, and always write whenever you get time. So thank you so much, Mr. Puneet, for calling me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for sharing your time and experience with all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.